Hello to all of you in our Book Marketing Pro Academy, and for anybody else who watches the replay, welcome. Tonight is part 4 in our series, our book launch series. Tonight, our topic is creating a marketing plan. And over the course of the last 3 trainings, we've really identified who our buyer is, where our buyer hangs out, and what marketing channel will be the best to use in reaching that buyer so that your launch is a success. But now it's time to put together a plan. And I'd like you to think of a marketing plan kind of like a GPS for your book success. Without it, it's easy to waste time and resources on activities that do not move the needle for you as far as book sales are concerned. But with a plan, you know exactly what to do, when to do it, and why it matters. It gives you direction and it keeps you focused on what's next. And I know in my own experience in life, without a plan, I am all over the planet. So all of us, even actually, especially if we are not by nature planners, then we definitely need one to make sure that our book launch serves not only our buyers, but helps us recoup our investment if we're paying to publish, or make a profit so that we can earn a living as an author, because there is no shame in that. And in fact, we encourage you to do so, because if not, why will we be talking about marketing? So there you go, deep thoughts with Sarah this evening. Tonight we'll cover, just as we've done before, 3 steps to creating a marketing plan. And as I figure this out, as far as the little PowerPoint is concerned, step number 1, I got it to that slide. Let's praise the Lord for small things. Step number 1 is to identify key actions to reach your buyer. And this is where you're going to really want to drill down into this idea that you know who your buyer is, you know where they hang out, and you know what channels are going to be the best to reach them in. And you're going to do that specifically by following 3 key actions to consider. So let's see if I can get it to the next slide without a big hullabaloo. The first here is to run targeted ads on platforms that your buyer uses. Now, let me clarify here. I am not talking about paid advertisements on social media platforms. Even though that is something you can do, that's not what I'm talking about. There are different schools of thought on whether that's even worth the trouble. What I am talking about is creating a campaign, an actual advertisement campaign. Let's say, for instance, on Facebook. You would want to create a visual, so a meme that actually advertises your book being on sale, a link in the comments, and then up where the post is, that's where you can put language that really draws the buyer in to hopefully then click on that link in the comment section and make a purchase. So for example, if you were selling a children's book, that language might include something like, looking for your next bedtime story? Discover this heartwarming tale that teaches kindness and courage, let us just say. So when I talk about running targeted ads, again, we're not talking about paid advertisements. Not that there's anything wrong with that, mind you, but what we are talking about is creating content that, again, hones in on that buyer's need, hones in on where that buyer hangs out, and then does so in a way that it's really going to capture their attention and make the most of the experience. The second key action, and this is where I'd like to spend a little bit more time, is partner with influencers or organizations your buyer trusts. Borrow their platform. Get in front of new people as a result of these partnerships. Look for bloggers, look for influencers, look for organizations that align with your purpose and your buying audience, and really identify how you can move the needle forward on that. Something that I want to recommend and suggest to you is that collaboration, not competition, is our best ally. So whether we are collaborating with other authors, whether we're collaborating with podcasters or other influencers, or collaborating with organizations that just have a heart for our message and our ministry, that is going to be the greatest place of strength for you now and years from now, because that really maximizes that organic reach and that person-to-person contact that really develops deep roots. For example, pitching articles to organizations and or magazines. We actually talked about, I think it was in the coaching session on Saturday, so sorry about this, that pitching article ideas to local newspapers would be one example of how to do this. But I know for me personally, with Even When, I was able to pitch an article idea to a major magazine that has a platform of over 500,000. And just because I wrote an article, now I didn't get paid for it, but the value I got was I got in front of 500,000 people that I wouldn't have otherwise. Other possible collaborations in this vein include radio interviews, TV interviews. I was blessed to have a TV interview where their platform was in the millions. We are better together. We are better when we collaborate, and we are better when we see the value of a shared platform, a shared audience, whether that be our reading audience or our buying audience. So hopefully that makes sense. The third key action that I want to identify for you here is to host events or webinars that can appeal to your buyer's interest. For example, hosting an event may include an in-person event like a book signing, or we talked about library, like story hour at the library for children's books. It may include a speaking engagement where the theme is directly connected to your book. And I would encourage you, if you do not have a talk that aligns specifically with the message of a book you're getting ready to launch, now is the time to write one, because that's another way to collaborate. That's another way to grow your area of influence by going and speaking. That gets you in the door, and then you have a new buying audience that you're presenting your message to, which will hopefully, again, spread the word in an organic way instead of an online way. Now, a webinar or a group that speaks to your buyer's interest. If you have a process that you are communicating in your book, maybe that's an area or a topic that you can key into. Another idea here would be, I know I talked a little bit about my friend who did some work as far as creating a Facebook group, but you can actually create a Facebook group that coincides with your launch, and doing something like, for instance, if you're writing a 30-day devotional, create a group to go through that devotional in 30 days together. Again, it gives your buyer an opportunity to kind of check out the content before they may make that purchase or decide, hey, I'm going to check the ebook out first. And then that translates to a print sale because you created an opportunity for community, you created an opportunity for connection. And that is the case whether it's online or offline. So again, hosting those events and taking action steps that are really going to meet those buyers' needs, but also are defined in purpose, are going to serve you well. If you want to put this into practice, something you can do is you can brainstorm 2 or 3 specific actions that would make sense for your book and audience, whether that's a book signing or pitching an article idea or reaching out to a community resource that will allow you to put on a certain event in person that would otherwise not be possible. Make those connections as soon as possible, because this piece, these key actions to moving forward, are what will inform step number 2, which is next slide. I need somebody to run these slides for me. So if anybody knows anyone who has nothing better to do on a Thursday evening than run my slides, let me know. It would help a sister out. But step number 2, break your launch plan into phases. And this will be my quote for the evening. A launch plan is not meant to be a noose around your neck. A launch plan is meant to be a tool for success. So at any point where this starts to feel constricting and you are maybe wanting to run for the hills, you have the ability to outline these phases and then set a timeline. You are in charge. No one else is in charge. You are in charge. So when approaching these phases, and the phases are really simple, they are pre-launch, during launch, and post-launch. And we'll go into a little bit more detail as to what that looks like. But again, you are putting this together. You know your life. You know what things will coincide with your book launch that's happening in your life. So allow it to give you structure, allow it to be a tool. But if at any point it feels like that noose is tightening, then it's time to reevaluate and see where you can flex. Always be flexible. Always hold your hands open. Hold that plan loosely so that it works the best for you and it works in real life, because there is always the unexpected, and book launches are certainly no exception. So you guys, when I do training of any such nature, I typically do not do it in the evening because I have a really hard time forming words in the evening. So please forgive me. But as we move into step 2, into the phases, phase number 1 is pre-launch. And the whole reason for phase number 1 is to build that excitement, to get people almost already on board to buying the book before it ever goes on sale. So anything that you do pre-launch should build that excitement. And what we're going to do for the purpose of this step, of this section, is we're going to identify a goal, and then we're going to identify some action steps that can be taken in order to meet that goal. And that's really how you're going to want to approach each one of these phases. So phase number one, let's say the goal, let's just make it super, super simple. Build awareness and excitement for your book, because we've already identified that's why we have a pre-launch in the first place. So some actions that might do this for you or meet that goal. Number one, you can share behind the scenes content. So I know some of you have seen like the Say Yes to the Press social media post that we give our folks when they sign the contract. There are different phases of the process. When you're editing, when you get the cover mock-ups back, when you get to see the typeset formatting, your book looking like an actual book for the first time, or maybe you're at a coffee shop meeting with a collaborator or meeting with somebody that you're partnering with. Taking pictures, especially if you're using social media as one of your marketing channels, and really just tracking that. There's another word that I'm looking for, but I'm not really sure what it is at this moment. But again, being intentional about giving them behind the scenes, like insider information, that always makes a content consumer, a buyer, a reader feel like they're special, like they're getting something that somebody else isn't if they aren't a follower. The same is true here. If you have a newsletter, you should have a newsletter. Please have a newsletter. That's for you, Miss Shelley Brown. But yes, you need a newsletter, and that can be a great place to also share behind the scenes content that maybe even people on social media aren't getting. Make them feel special, make them feel a part of the journey, and they'll already be invested and willing to probably buy your book when it comes out. Another action is you could offer free samples like a downloadable chapter. If you're writing a devotional, you can download for maybe one of the devotions that's included in the book. Again, with the sole purpose of really getting buyers, piquing their interest, saying, this is why you want to buy my book. You want to leave them wanting more. You want to build that anticipation. A third action here might include promoting the book on social media. Do a countdown. Once you have that date, back it up 30 days and do a countdown. Create content. Again, that always gives us this sense of urgency, this sense of excitement. Shoot, we had a countdown to give you a sense of excitement to be on this training this evening. It is something that naturally, innately in us creates that sense of urgency, creates that sense of excitement, creates the anticipation that we really want for phase number one, which is your pre-launch. So that's phase number one. Phase number two is the launch. What is the overarching purpose here is to generate buzz and sales. And keep in mind, when I talk about podcasts, when I talk about articles, as much as you can align those kind of things around the same time as your launch, you'll really be maximizing how those things can generate buzz. You may see sales later down the road, and that's okay if that's when the opportunity comes available to you. But really having a lot of that activity helps do this for you and create that buzz without pooping you out. Because again, you're borrowing somebody else's audience. You are leaning in to their platform so that you're not doing this on your own. You're leaning into the collaborative process. Two people who do this exceptionally well and have done this exceptionally well is Christine Trimp. She just recently released a book in February, and you have seen even for months this anticipation. But now that we're getting to the release of the book, all these podcast interviews are coming out to coincide with the launch itself. Another person is our lovely Janet McHenry. That woman is the boss when it comes to creating podcast opportunities to align with a launch as to create a real buzz and an increase in sales, an increase of getting things in front of the people they need to be getting in front of, and borrowing on that shared audience, on that collaborative effort. So just like we did with phase number 1, we're going to identify a goal and then kind of flesh through a few action steps that might stem from that goal. So we're going to keep it really simple, just like we did the last time. Our goal is to create buzz around our release and maximize initial sales. That's what we want to do. We keep it simple. We do not complicate it. Some examples of actions that you can take as you, having some tech issues. So sorry about that. But one of the actions that might stem from that particular goal would be to announce your book launch through email campaigns and social media. So creating a really identified campaign that announces available now. So think of like on Facebook, bless my soul, mine is still up. So if you want to see an example of outdated content, but what you should do during launch is to have your Facebook cover on all the different social media platforms or even on your website, something that says, hey, the book is available now, and I'm advertising it on social media. I'm advertising it through my email. I'm creating campaigns that build on one another to make sure, again, that buzz is happening, but it also generates sales as well. I already talked about how another action you can take is to schedule your biggest promotional activities like influencer collaborations, like podcast guest spots, like targeted ads, but also launch events. Having a well-planned and well-advertised launch event where you can take pictures and you can update your social media, you can update your newsletter with all the things that happened as a part of that event helps to meet that during launch goal. Okay. Another action that you can take in this generating buzz and maximizing your initial sales is to encourage buyers to share reviews or provide testimonials like endorsements. So here at Redemption Press, we are big believers of taking the endorsers who you have in your book, making sure that you use that as promotional content, because it does something for you being in print. But again, it's this whole idea of working smarter, not harder, taking content from people who assumably have a bigger name, bigger platform than you do, and putting their stamp of approval on your book is great for you to run as you're generating those reviews when your book releases. We are also a firm believer in reviews. Our ABC book launch is a strategy to get reviews on Amazon because they will promote your book at a certain point, a certain number of reviews. And so we have a strategy that builds on that and positions our authors who take advantage of it in a prime place to get those new release banners. And that's not just Redemption Press. Those are the holy grails. You want those new release, number one release banners so that, again, you can use it to what? Generate buzz and maximize initial sales, because we all want to jump on that. We all want to do what everyone else is doing. We just do. We want to know that people think this is a good idea and it was worth the read and it was worth the investment. And so using reviews, using endorsements in a strategic way is really going to help for phase number 2. Okay, so we've made it through phase number 1. We've made it through phase number 2. Phase number 3 is post-launch. And our goal here is to sustain engagement. So the broader goal is to sustain engagement, and for illustrative purposes, it is also to sustain engagement. You want to keep your book relevant. Don't forget the wah, 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 wah. We do not want a launch to end and our buyer and all the people we have been engaging with for months and months and months to hear that. We need to provide some sustained engagement, next steps, other opportunities, keeping it fresh and keeping that message in front of people. I think one of the biggest disservices we do to authors in the publishing industry is always, okay, what's the next book? What's the next book? What's the next book? God gave you a message for a purpose and a reason. And if we truly believe that organic reach is really what is going to maximize the success of your book in the long term, then we need to continue to cultivate that message and cultivate new and fresh ideas in how to create engagement post-launch. So if that is our goal, some of the actions that we can take are, again, share success stories, share book. Okay, one of the things that I think is super fun, especially for fiction authors, is book clubs. Go visit book clubs in person. Not only will it build goodwill in your community, but it also gives you an opportunity to create easy content in your newsletter, on social media. You now have pictures with these darling dears that were a part of the book club. And so it kind of 2 birds, 1 stone there. You can also create the same type of energy or buzz in an online book club. Don't ever be afraid to do the same thing. I know when Even One came out, there was a dear a podcaster who reached out to me who has a book club with some of her colleagues and asked if I would come because they were reading Even One together. And it was one of the sweetest experiences. And I think it also gives us a unique insight into how our readers interact with our content. That is always important. And we've talked about how everything that we are doing is a learning opportunity. And so one of the ways to do that would be able to key into local book clubs or online book clubs. You may also create updates on how your book is being used. If it's being used within a ministry at your church or an online ministry, share that, engage with people, seek out other ministry partnerships in which you can do the same thing. Allow it to inform your actions post-launch. The next thing that you can do, or the final action that we'll just kind of cover in this particular phase of post-launch, is continue to connect with your readers and continue to interact with them about this particular content. So don't just let your newsletter, make sure that you have follow-up, that you, yes, create a campaign in your newsletter, in your email marketing to build excitement and anticipation, but continue that thread to really maximize how your book can be used for them personally, and maybe even putting ideas like, let's say, if you are a ministry leader in X area, let's say youth, and you have written a book about teenagers and how to grow their faith, then putting that out there in your email newsletter also gives people who are already connected to you the opportunity to figure out how to help you, because the chances are they are church attenders. Most of us probably have large audiences that go to church, and that will give them ideas as to how they can grow your buying audience. Now, as you are identifying the goals and the actions for each phase, here's some tips for success. Number one, and we said this the last time, be consistent. Follow through with what you've said you would do. Just do it and show up consistently. Now, I'm going to go back to zeal to be incredibly awesome. Create a noose around your neck by overcommitting to what you will do on a consistent basis. Make sure you have that breathing room that we've already talked about. The next tip I would give you is track what's working. Figure out, like, if there is a post that has a ridiculous amount of shares or a lot of comments, a lot of engagement, use it as an opportunity to look at it and say, okay, what is it about this post that is resonating with my buyer, and how can I duplicate it in a way that will work for me? So that might be a pivot that you might do or take based on the experience that you have in real time. The last tip I would give you is, if you see something's not working, adjust. It's okay to adapt. It's okay to change in order to make it more effective. This is, as I said, this is a living in real time process, and you can't get so tied to the plan that you don't allow yourself the benefit to flex and breathe in between. If you want to do an exercise, and I think this is on the PDF I posted, spend about 4 minutes working on your timeline, identifying several goals and what the actions that would align with those goals might be for your particular book, which leads us to step number 3. Step number 3 is schedule your timeline and start small. Again, no noose. We want tools for your success. So start small. In order for you to build your timeline effectively, you're going to want to do 3 things. Number 1, start by listing your milestones. If you were, for example, writing a children's book, and a milestone that you might include for pre-launch is announcing your book 3 months before launch and starting an Instagram teaser campaign. So a drip of building that excitement and that anticipation to that children's book's launch. Launch for a children's book, an example of a milestone might be host a live event. So either that maybe be a book signing. It also might be story time at the library or a virtual reading online with moms and kids. That would be another example of how you could list a milestone that coincided with that launch phase. So pre-launch, we say, let's drum up some excitement, get that Instagram drip campaign going and announce the book's release. Then we launch, and we're planning events that will engage with the community and generate that buzz. And then the third thing, the last phase, the post-launch, if you are a children's book author and you're trying to establish a milestone, you might share pictures of people who have bought the book. What is more adorable than a child with a children's book? I mean, that's a layup. People are going to be like, I will buy that book just because that child is so cute. Okay, maybe that's not true, but it's a great way to use what you're already doing to generate increased engagement and continued engagement post launch. So again, how to build your timeline. Number one, oops, and I forgot to change the slide. Are we surprised? We are not, but there we go. So we start by listing those milestones. That's our step number one. And then we work backwards from key dates. Now, let me say this. Sometimes an actual launch date is a little hard to come by until you get 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out. In my case, it was like months out, but I just didn't know. So I know at Redemption Press, a lot depends on timelines for other projects, books, vendors' availability. So narrowing down that date is probably not going to be possible without maybe a 3 to 4 week window. You might get a 3 to 4 week window, but you can usually identify the month of launch or the season of launch. So you can kind of build back from there. It doesn't necessarily have to be a specific date. You can just say 3 months to launch, 2 months to launch, 1 month to launch. Again, it's not meant for you to become slave to the timeline. It's meant to give you an effective tool to putting a plan together. I would encourage you to make smaller deadlines along the way leading up to your launch, during launch, post-launch, because if you don't do that, again, that would take away your ability to give purpose and direction to your launch. It's not just, I'm going to start my pre-launch this time, I'm going to launch this date, and then I'm going to conclude my post-launch activities this date. There are smaller little deadlines that you're going to need to connect back to those action steps in phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So, number 1, start by listing your milestones. Number 2, work backward from key dates. Number 3, be realistic. And I know you're tired of hearing this, but be consistent. Consistency is key. Breathing room is key. And holding it all loosely, because invariably things will happen. Like, I didn't get books until 4 weeks after other people got books. So people literally got my book before I did because there was a delay. Sometimes Amazon is goofy and a launch date will be set, but because Amazon is its own animal, maybe they run out of books, like happened to Janet McHenry, or maybe for whatever reason it is not available, or all the different versions of the book aren't what we call linked, so they're not in one place. There's so many things that can go wrong. Just remember, as you're putting this plan together, as you are establishing the steps, the phases, and then a more specific timeline, is that God knew before the foundation of the world when that book was going to get launched. He knew what problems you would run into. He knew how many people were going to be reached by your message, by your book. And you can trust that the same God who has worked miracles over and over can hold your book launch in his hands. And that's something to remember at the end of the day for all of us, is that plans are great, but God's plans are greater. So, believe it or not, I almost hit the 40-minute mark. So sorry, y'all. Again, brevity, not my spiritual gift, but let me see if there are any. Oh, sweet Sarah, looking forward to this teaching. Bless your heart. Thank you so much for looking forward to this. Colleen, thank goodness I'll be able to take notes with the replay. Right now I'm breading chicken. Way to go on the multitasking. I feel like that's something we should probably have maybe a live teaching on. And then what is the best way to find people to endorse our books? That is a great question, Colleen. And I would say the answer to that is number one, look at authors who are I would say number one. And I said that twice, didn't I? Apparently, I really thought it needed to be emphasized. This is the reason you engage in community and you engage with authors who have gone before you, who have more experience than you do, who have a bigger platform than you do. And this is also why you collaborate, is because you build these relationships with people who will be delighted to turn around and say, let me endorse your book because somebody else did this for me. So again, I would, the main thing to remember here though, is you want that audience to align. You want people who are serving similar audiences or can speak to the subject of your book. So for you, Colleen, since you're writing a devotional for cancer patients who are going through the treatment process, then you may want to have authors who have written books about the cancer journey. That would be a great endorser for you to consider. It would also maybe looking at organizations that are affiliated with the cancer journey, maybe finding some influencers that are connected there and reaching out. I'm not saying that every inquiry that you put out for, please endorse my book, you're going to get a positive response. But just like I said in the last training, people cannot say yes or no if you don't ask. So if you have somebody in mind, ask them. There's strategy to doing it, and maybe that's another training we'll need to do here in a little bit for our book marketing, book marketing academy peeps. Thank you for all the great questions. And I hope that chicken got breaded, my dear Colleen. It sounds delicious. I'll be over for dinner soon. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you tomorrow for the live coaching with Sarah Hugh on creating a marketing plan that will launch her book for success. Have a wonderful evening, and I will see you the next time.